Mr. Zhang Boli, President of the Chinese Academy of Sciences. Online discussion of the role of traditional Chinese medicine in combating COVID-19. Main organizer, Chinese Consulate General of Los Angeles. Supporting organizer, Healu Now Traditional Chinese Medicine Online Information Hotline. Dr. Zhang Boli is an expert in internal Chinese medicine, President of the Chinese Academy of Engineering, Director of the Department of Medicine and Hygiene, President of Tianjin University of Traditional Chinese Medicine, and Honorary President of China Academy of Chinese Medical Sciences. During the fight against SARS in 2003, he served as the chief of the first Chinese medicine medical team formed to combat SARS. In February 2020, in response to the new COVID epidemic, Dr. Zhang led a national team of traditional Chinese medicine professionals composed of medical teams from Tianjin, Jiangsu, Hunan, and other provinces to Wuhan province. The national team was stationed in Wuhan's Jiangxia Fangcai Traditional Chinese Medicine Hospital. This is an online conversation based on his personal experience of leading the traditional Chinese medicine team on the front lines of Wuhan's anti-coronavirus clinics and field hospitals.
在线的各位网友，大家晚上好。
Good evening to all of our viewers. It is 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on April 10th. Thank you for tuning into this event, jointly hosted by the Chinese Consulate General in Los Angeles and our online community of traditional Chinese medicine professionals. Today we are joined by Professor Zhang Boli, President of the China Academy of Chinese Medical Sciences, to speak about the role of traditional Chinese medicine, or TCM, in our ongoing battle against the novel coronavirus and COVID-19. My name is Gao Yuan, and I will be your host this evening.
将在线交流如何利用中医药防疫抗疫。
The outbreak in the United States is getting worse. I urge the viewers to please make sure you wear masks appropriately when going outside, and also to observe social distancing protocols.
好的，谢谢张院士，谢谢张总。
So we've noticed that the daily number of new cases in China has been kept under 100, and the majority of these cases are actually imported cases. China has had success in the battle against coronavirus so far, and traditional Chinese medicine, or TCM, has played an important role throughout this battle. Mr. Zhang, could you please speak to how TCM has factored into this effort? Are there any quantifiable standards and/or data that you could share with us? Sure. So traditional Chinese medicine, or TCM, participated in the fight early on and played a critical role every step of the way, from supporting during the quarantine period, to helping hospitals, to treating patients, to now helping patients in long-term recovery. The combination of Western and traditional Chinese medicine highlighted China's anti-coronavirus battle, especially when there was no approved drug or vaccine for COVID-19.
没有这个特效药、没有疫苗的情况下，我们中医药有有效的治疗方案。如果说量化的指标呢，我手里有一组数据。
I have some statistics to share as well. About 4,900 TCM professionals were sent to support Wuhan, which composed about 13% of the medical support that came from outside Wuhan province in total. About 74,000 confirmed cases in the whole country were treated by traditional Chinese medicine, which is about 91.5% of overall confirmed cases. Among all the confirmed cases in Hubei province, 90.6%, or about 61,000 patients, were treated with TCM. TCM was widely used to treat minor and mild cases, and together with Western medicine, TCM played a critical role in treating severe cases as well. TCM's main role is in the recovery stage, and in treating asymptomatic cases, which has become even more important recently.
但是现在这几天又出现就是无症状感染者，这块现在是
好的，好的。
So before you mentioned that traditional Chinese medicine was used to treat both severe and mild cases of COVID-19. Could you elaborate on how the treatments were different and how TCM actually worked in those cases? Minor and severe cases of COVID-19 require different medical resources. In the beginning, hospitals were crowded with patients with all different severity levels of the virus. At the time, Mr. Wang Cheng, another member of the Chinese Academy of Sciences, suggested building field hospitals, and this suggestion was adopted. So within 2 to 3 days, field hospitals were built and minor cases were moved there. Although they served as makeshift hospitals, field hospitals had basic medical equipment such as ECG machines, oxygen tanks, IVs, emergency operating rooms, etc. However, the medical resources in the field hospitals were not sufficient enough to treat severe cases. So instead of housing all patients together, severe cases were housed in regular hospitals and minor cases were housed in field hospitals. This distinction allowed us to distribute medical resources more efficiently. Traditional Chinese medicine, or TCM, was widely used in field hospitals. For example, the Jiangxia Field Hospital, which is now well known, used 100% TCM treatment methods and was staffed entirely by TCM doctors. The TCM treatments distributed included herbs, gua sha, acupressure, tai chi, acupuncture, and other holistic forms of treatment. At other field hospitals with fewer TCM practitioners, they maybe only incorporated herbal and acupressure treatments to a portion of the patients. But although field hospitals incorporated TCM treatment to various degrees, the positive benefit of the TCM treatment was very obvious.
但即使这样，整个方舱里的中医的这个治疗的以后的效果是比较明显的。重症的，我们说这个。
We focus on preventing minor cases from turning into severe cases, because once a case becomes severe, the patient requires more medical resources, fatality rates are much higher, and it's much more difficult for doctors to aid their recovery. The World Health Organization says that about 13% of cases are severe, 7% of cases are mild to severe, and therefore about 80% of COVID cases are in fact mild. A national study in China showed that 10% of mild cases turn into severe ones in the whole country. But in field hospitals, only 2% to 5% of cases turn severe, proving the efficacy of TCM treatment.
没有一个转为重症的，这是在方舱里。在定点医院呢，重点是重症的和重危症。
Regular hospitals treat severe and mild to severe cases with a combination of Western and TCM treatment methods. TCM supplements Western medicine at crucial points of treatment. For example, if a patient is on a ventilator and continues to show low blood oxygen levels and low oxygen saturation rates, TCM herbs are used to treat patients via nasal injection. After 1 to 2 days of the treatment, patients showed higher blood oxygen levels and higher oxygen saturation rates. Through using simple methods, TCM was proven to be crucial in this treatment. Another example would be if a patient's breathing rhythm does not sync with the ventilator he or she is using, or if they are not adjusting well to using the ventilator. This causes the patient's abdomen to bloat. In such a situation, we give the patient TCM herbal laxatives to help the patient excrete toxins from their body. Once the abdomen deflates, then the ventilator becomes useful again and helps facilitate breathing.
等一服药下去以后，病人大便一泻，肚子瘪了，膈肌下来了，呼吸畅快多了。有的炎症吸收不好，肺的炎症啊，我看了一些个美国朋友传过来的片子，炎症都比较重。
With some severe patients, inflammation might make it difficult for the body to absorb antibiotics that are applied. In that case, TCM uses detoxification herbs as a supplement to antibiotics. The list of successful TCM treatments goes on and on. These are just some examples of where we have worked with Western medicine and crucially supplemented their work in order to save patients' lives.
发挥了作用，共同的挽救了病人的生命。轻症是
For
普遍
mild
服药。
cases, we have a few herbal formulas that we give
重
to
症呢，
every
我们一人
patient.
一法，一人一方
For
的来
severe
治疗。
cases, we
反正
prescribe
一般
herbs
重
on
症
a
的服药。
case-by-case
由于这个
basis.
前线的指导组
The
呢，
Chinese
接
government
受了这个意
approved
见，
of the
所以所有武
combination
汉
of
重症的病
TCM
人
and Western
都
medicine
采取
in
中医
treating
和西医
severe
结合的方法
COVID-19
共同会
cases.
诊。2个
In
西医， 1个
Wuhan,
中医，
every
对
patient
这个
with
病人
severe
该用什
case
么
of
方子，对
COVID
那个病人该
was
用什么，
treated
都不一
by
样。
a combination
其
of
他
Western and
重新
traditional
核查
Chinese
一次，
medicine
再会诊。
and
以
was
前再换，
assigned 2 Western
这个药
doctors
会诊
and
呢
1 traditional
6、
Chinese
7
medicine
次，七八次
doctor.
甚至10几次，
To
少
treat
的
one
也有4、
patient,
5次。
TCM
这样
practitioners
使
usually
整个的
reconvene 4
病
to
人的
5
病死率
times
大
throughout the
幅度
treatment
下降。
process to
当
assess the patient's
我们在
progress.
3月
The mortality
在
rate
10
of
几
these
号的时
patients
候，
has decreased dramatically.
每天死亡的数一天都是100多人，
Around
到了
March
3月
10th,
20几号就降到
about
几十个
100
人，
patients would
到了3
die
月底
each
呢，
day in our
基本
hospitals.
降到几个人，这
Around
个比
March
例就慢慢的
20th,
下降。
it decreased to
所以
10
公益
people per
这时候
day,
在救治
and
重
by
症
the
病
end
人，
of March,
提
it
高
was
治愈
only
率，
several
降低
patients a
死亡
day.
率一个重要的。
So TCM played a
还有
tremendous
大力
role
宣
in
传，
preventing the
生命
increase
保
in
护。
severe
好的，
cases,
好
in
的，好的，
treating
谢谢
severe
张医师
cases,
非常非常
and
详
in
细的对于
decreasing the
轻
overall
症
mortality
中医
rate.
药是怎么来解决的，对于重症又是怎么来解决的啊？刚才你讲了，其实中医从前期的预防
Many people
到
are now
轻症到
concerned
重
that
症，
recovered
还有一个
patients
关
might
键是
once
康
again
复
test
啊。
positive
可
for
能大家现在比较
COVID-19.
关心的是新冠
What's
患
the
者治愈
approximate
后复
percentage of
复阳
recovered
这个指标，
patients who
但
will
是相对
retest
于这个复
positive?
阳治愈
What
后
are
的
the
后
symptoms of this residual disease,
后的
and
这个
how
后
does
遗症的
TCM
比
treat
例
this?
大概是多少？那他们的表现是怎么样的？那么针对后遗症的康复治疗，咱们中医药的这个疗效怎么样？谢谢您。
这个问题现在正是我们在研究的问题。
This is a question that we're very
现在还
invested
没
in
有，
as
因为
well.
现在刚刚
It's hard to
这
give
个
a
进入到康复
percentage
阶段
of
嘛。
patients who might retest
我们
positive
阶段是这样，
because we have just entered this
现在轻症的
post-recovery
病人呢，
stage.
康复的量
Most
比较
patients
轻，
with mild
这部分
cases
病人
usually
恢复
recover
得比较好。
completely.
重症的病人在恢复期呢，会有一些个
Most patients
因
with
为有
severe
的那个
cases
肺
might
里，
still
虽
have
然它
some
2次
lingering
核酸检
infection
它
in
是
their
阴性
lungs,
的，
and a
但
few
它
of the
肺里的
cases
炎症
show
呢，
signs of
已经明
pulmonary
显的吸收了，但
fibrosis.
没吸收完全。
Others suffer from
还
chronic
有少部分
coughing,
人呢，出现了一些
tiredness,
间质的有
damaged
些血液
pulmonary
化的
and
倾向，
cardiac functions,
病人还
as
有一
well
些
as
咳
some
嗽、乏
psychological
力、
issues such as stress and anxiety.
出汗、活动以后心慌，这些个呢，我们是采取针对病人进行康复的患者。
We tailor our treatment
1年以
methods to
后呢，
each
才制定
individual
了个方案。
patient's needs.
我们有
We have
康复门
post-recovery
诊，
clinics
有康复的
and
病房，
psychological therapists on staff.
还有这个
Because COVID-19
心理
causes
的
damage
这个
mainly to the respiratory system and
胃
immune
的
system,
这个
we mainly focus
专门的科
on
室，
breathing
治疗
exercises
的
in the
一个呼吸
post-recovery
的训练，
stage.
因为它
We
肺
also
上
ask
主
patients
要
to
损
take
伤的新
TCM
冠，
medications
第一
to
个是
prevent pulmonary
呼吸系统，
fibrosis.
包括对肺的损伤。
Based on our
第二就是免
experience,
疫，
the
主要是
fibrosis
这
rate of
个。现在
COVID
这个学
is
部呢，
lower
特
than
别
that
是
of
一个是呼吸
SARS.
训练，
And
很
with
重
the
要。
help of
第二
TCM, we are
靠
confident
听
that
声
most
来
patients
调理
won't
它的呼
develop
吸功能，
pulmonary
听
fibrosis.
里的这个帮助把这个残存的炎症啊，帮助它吸收，防止它的血液化。它一般的血液化比 SARS 要轻，所以通过积极的治疗以
TCM
后呢，
treatment is also very
吸收的
effective
很
in
快。
restoring
对于它的
cardiopulmonary
这个
functions.
这个
Therefore,
心
we
肺
are
功
very
能的康复，
confident in our
就和它
ability
有
to
必要
help in the post-recovery
能够
stage.
复阳的问题并不太大，因为我们现在发
In
现
terms
复
of
阳的问
patients
题，它
testing
主要是这
positive
个病
again,
了，
there is
它
no
是
need
这
to
个
panic. A lot of previous
有些个
patients
痰呐，
still have residual
这个
phlegm
痰是
in their
黏痰，
bronchioles,
这个
which
黏
still
痰里边
contain the
全部
virus.
在小的气道，就小支气管了。这个痰里边包着病毒，
Therefore,
所以
although
在你
patients are
康复的
tested
时候呢，
negative by
在这
nasal
个出院
pharyngeal
的时候，
swab
检
when
查
they
你
leave the
咽拭
hospital,
子，
the phlegm in the
看到
bronchioles
病
will be
毒是阴
excreted
性的
as the
就出院
patients
了。
are
出院在修
recovering,
复过程中，
which releases
这
the
个气管的功
coronavirus
能慢慢
and
的恢
therefore
复，
makes the
它
patients
把这些
retest
个
positive.
痰酸呢，慢慢的往外排，排的过程中，痰排出来了，痰里边裹的那病毒也出来了，所以又复阳了。但这个复阳呢，
But even if these patients test positive, they are not contagious. It's just the phlegm that contains the virus, but the virus is actually dead. We ask those patients to take TCM medications to help expedite the excretion of the phlegm. Once the phlegm has been coughed out of the system, then they'll once again test negative for COVID. Again, there are no reports as of today that indicate that patients who retest positive for COVID are contagious.
我们这个部分哈，最后一个问题，张院士，我们知道您从1月27号就
Doctor, we know that you've been in Wuhan since January 27th as part of the medical leadership team in the fight against coronavirus, and that you are in fact still in Wuhan now. What is one incident that has left you with a deep impression throughout your stay in?
倒不是我们医务人员，是志愿者们。
I think we unified our strength in fighting the virus. What impressed me the most was actually not our doctors, but our volunteers who came from every corner of the country. Some of them applied to come to Wuhan from other cities, and some of them stayed to help after the city went into lockdown. They helped pick up our healthcare workers to and from work around the clock. They also helped our Wuhan residents buy groceries and other basic supplies and left them outside of people's doors. They kept this up for months at a time.
都封在家里了，不让出来，买菜买些生活用品。有一个报道，一个女孩。
I remember there was one university student who helped residents buy the medicine they needed. She would run to dozens of pharmacies per day just to find the cheapest medicine for people and then deliver it to their houses.
他给买药不但给你买，还给你算计哪个药最合适，买的最便宜的，是吧？这个一天要跑几十家药店，同时买完了还要给送。
我这边是环球时报的记者，刘彩玉。我这边准备了一个问题呢。
This is Liu Caiyu of the Global Times. So we know that TCM has proven to be effective in fighting the COVID-19 outbreak in China. If TCM were approved to be used to treat patients here, to what extent do you think traditional Chinese medicine could help control the spread of the disease here in the United States?
这个是非常有挑战的一个问题。
It's a very challenging question because it's a hypothetical scenario and its basic premise has not been met. I don't know if TCM will ever be an approved treatment method in the United States. I've been mailing some TCM prepackaged medicine to my friends and students in the United States, but I know that their use is very limited to Chinese communities and a few of their American friends who have actively asked them for this medicine. Given that TCM cannot be widely used in the US as it was in China, the small-scale distribution of some of these herbs is still a good start, but this also greatly limits the potential effectiveness of TCM.
那么大面积的使用产生的结果。 因为现在很大一个问题，我听说美国的轻症的病人都宅在家里边，在家里。
One big problem is that I heard that in most mild cases in the United States, patients are isolated at home as opposed to going to the hospital. This is what we did in Wuhan in the beginning. However, I don't think that it was that effective, because unless patients are living totally alone, the patients will infect their families. In China, we learned from this, and that's why we originally built field hospitals, to keep all the patients with mild cases together. Since patients who already have mild cases cannot infect each other, we just had to make sure hospital workers were properly protected. This was highly effective, even during the short term.
同时呢，这个我就讲了，方舱的病人、轻症病人。
As I said before, the key here is to prevent mild cases from turning into severe ones. If you don't isolate and treat patients with mild cases, then 10% of them will turn into severe cases, as shown in the Chinese report. When these patients, now with severe cases, have to be hospitalized, it puts a massive strain on the healthcare system. So preventing mild cases from becoming severe is crucial. Crucial for the healthcare system, for doctors, and for society at large. For patients with mild cases, I encourage using pre-made TCM medications if you are in the United States. Using fresh herbs would be more effective if you can find them. But even for patients with mild cases, you must abide by strict quarantine measures at home. From my experience, you cannot underestimate the importance of self-quarantine. You should wear a mask at home if you are living with others. The best would be if you could isolate in a room and have people deliver food to outside your door. This is the strictest and most effective form of self-quarantine. If you are callous about it, it could be very dangerous to the loved ones that you live with.
I apologize for not being able to say more on this topic. I know that every country has its own set of regulations and there is no way to forcibly overcome that. But I do feel slightly regretful that TCM cannot be used in the United States. We have seen that it is effective and has helped so many patients at crucial points in their recovery, but it cannot be used on a widespread basis. But I once again encourage everyone to use prepackaged traditional Chinese medicine, and to especially start using it early. If you only start taking it once you're very sick, it will be much less effective. If you have any mild flu-like symptoms, such as slight chills, fever, coughing, anything, regardless of whether it is COVID-19 or not, take TCM medications. Our medication is not just for COVID. It can help with the common cold and flu, and helps improve your general immunity and health. Double the dose the first time you take it. Drink lots of hot water, and get lots of rest. Hi, Mr. Zhang. I am a representative of the International Chinese Student Body at Pasadena City College. I understand that TCM usually puts a focus on maintaining a balanced diet and regulating one's health. To my understanding, many international Chinese students here have irregular daily schedules and sleeping patterns that can lead to some health issues. Since we all have more free time right now during home isolation, I think this is a good opportunity for recuperation. Can you give us some suggestions for what we can do while at home to improve our immunity and improve the overall condition of our health? I also hoped we could be of some help to our Chinese students abroad. I prescribed a formula for herbal tea bags that is being produced here in Hubei. I tasted the tea yesterday, and it actually tastes pretty good. We hope to mass produce these herbal tea bags and ship it to our students abroad. You drink this medicine like tea 3 times daily. It helps prevent infection, detoxifies the body, and regulates your overall health and ability to fight the virus. I hope you will receive this medicine as soon as possible.
让身体调到一个比较好的状态来应对这次新冠。我想在家里来说，对特别是青年的学子
I think for students, especially the younger students like yourself, quarantine is a good time for self-reflection. You normally don't have time to reflect since you're so busy, but now is a time to deeply consider and think about how we can move forward successfully together. You all have very long lives and careers ahead of you. Often, it's not about who is the most skilled or talented in the end, but it is about who stays healthy. Just like in these last few months, during the most stressful part of our fight against COVID, I got sick myself. I even had to get surgery. But my younger students, who are healthier than I am, were all completely fine. So your bodily health is incredibly important. So I encourage students to keep a regular schedule during quarantine. You don't need to pull all-nighters to study anymore, so try to sleep early and rise early. You'll be more productive that way. Be mindful of your diet. Try to eat light and eat lots of fresh fruit and vegetables. I also think students should maintain a healthy state of mind. There's no need to be overly stressed or anxious. If you just stay at home, you are relatively safe. Why do some people get sick from the virus while others do not? It has something to do with your basic immunity and ability to resist infection. If you have a bad diet or are overly stressed and anxious, this all contributes to lower immunity and increases your susceptibility to infection. So I hope that students can use this time to organize their daily schedule, increase their productivity, and live a healthy lifestyle.
Even if you feel a little bit sick, make sure to take medicine immediately. We mentioned the herbal teas before, but I know you can also get some prepackaged TCM herbs in the US. The most important thing is to get your body to the healthiest state possible in order to most effectively face this virus. So it doesn't mean that just because you're at home, you have nothing to do. Improving your baseline health is an important contribution to any society that's fighting the virus, and the best way to protect yourself too. This is just something I hope you think about. Hi, Dr. Zhang, and thank you for taking the time to be with us today. Chinese communities in the US have some familiarity with common traditional Chinese herbs, but we are far from experts. My question is whether the Lianhua Qingwen capsule, a common capsule used to treat colds and flus, should be used for prevention or treatment. Should patients take it when they have mild or severe symptoms? Should we be taking TCM herbs even when we are healthy for preventative purposes? Could you recommend some effective TCM remedies that we can actually find here in the States?
好，谢谢您。这个莲花清瘟呢是一张。
Lianhua Qingwen was originally developed to treat SARS, and then after the SARS outbreak was contained, it was then used to treat influenza. It is a combination of two famous ancient recipes in traditional Chinese medicine. This medication is comparatively strong and its effects are large, so it should be used for treatment purposes only.
所以我们在这次这个新冠肺炎的时候。
Lianhua Qingwen was recommended for use against COVID-19. We ran a study with over 20 hospitals from 9 different provinces on the effectiveness of this medicine against COVID. The results of that study show that the medicine is effective for patients with mild and typical cases of COVID.
也证实这个药对于轻度普通型的这个患者。
So, since it's effective, can it be used for prevention? Technically, yes, since it treats influenza, patients who suspect they have COVID or have flu-like symptoms like fevers can take it. However, I don't think it's necessary for healthy people to take TCM medications. What I said to the students before holds. Getting your body to the best baseline level of health is the most important, and you don't necessarily need medicine to do that. What's prescribed in the herbal teas are generally very mild herbs that are for regulation and conditioning, unlike these stronger treatments. But if you show any symptoms, then take medicine immediately. If you wake up with a scratchy throat or dry throat and nose, take some herbs. Even if you have mild GI symptoms, then go ahead and take something to treat those symptoms. Because if you are not feeling well, then your immunity is compromised. Treating whatever condition you do have will make you better equipped to resist COVID infection. Some people have pointed out that the medicines I recommend are not in fact available in the United States. But after doing some visits myself to Chinese pharmacies in the US, I found that 藿香正气, 颗粒剂, and other different capsules are all available in the US.
包括这个胶囊啊，我看都有卖的。像这个银翘解毒。
银翘解毒 is a good choice here, which is sold in Tongren堂pharmacies in the States. Any pre-made TCM medications to treat the flu, coughing, or colds, such as 清热百毒 and 清热解毒, which are all sold in capsule form, can be effective for COVID-19 prevention and treatment. It might be good to stock up on some of these prepackaged herbs at home so that you can take them in case you develop any symptoms early on.
如果在怀疑自己是不是或者感冒时，都可以吃上点这个药，它都有一定的作用啊。我的实验室。
We ran a study with all 65 forms of prepackaged TCM medications used to treat colds and flus, and found that they were all effective in treating a certain element of COVID. Some of them slow the spread of the disease, some prevent the virus from replicating as quickly, etc. Chinese medicine is different from Western medicine in that it's not necessarily targeted. There isn't one TCM medication that specifically treats COVID. Instead, TCM medications are holistic treatments that regulate your overall health, so they will be effective in treating COVID symptoms. But again, I don't recommend that people who are completely healthy unnecessarily take this medicine.
网友提问说，张院士，您刚刚
One online viewer submitted a question to you, Dr. Zhang. So before you mentioned a dead virus, what exactly is a dead virus?
这是个专业的问题。这个冠状病毒啊，
This is a very professional question. So coronavirus is active in the human body. It can replicate and spread. Coronavirus enters the human body via a cellular receptor protein called ACE2, which is a receptor found on the respiratory cells, mostly in the lungs and respiratory tract, which also explains why coronavirus often ends up in the lungs.
跟这种受体非常容易结合。身体里哪些个部位容易有这种受体呢？就是肺。 但是这个病毒侵袭到人体以后，
The virus is most infectious and most deadly when it first enters the human body.
它的毒力最强。
Its strength decreases gradually, usually over the course of 1 week, because our immune system kills the virus, and the virus also naturally dies out on its own.
本身就死了。那你说什么？它消灭了又转成重症？
So once the virus is killed, how do mild cases become severe? That's because our immune systems overreact in a way. While killing the virus, our immune cells also attack the healthy organs in our bodies, which explains why some cases turn severe. Here, the virus is not inflicting most of the damage. It is still the most lethal during the first period of infection.
病毒死了以后，病毒被消灭以后呢，病毒整个就分解了，它生成一个现在一个片段。
Once the virus is killed, we consider it a dead virus. A dead virus is not contagious. In most recovered patients who test positive again, we find that their anti-corona antibodies tested positive, but the coronavirus actually tested negative, which means that the virus is no longer contagious. Many asymptomatic patients also have these antibodies. A lot of positive tests are caused by the existence of virus fragments, which does not necessarily mean the presence of an active virus. That virus could no longer be able to reproduce, so it could be dead. The virus is most dangerous at the beginning, like I mentioned. The reason why so many cases turn severe and sometimes lead to death is because of complications in the initial immune system response to the virus that can lead to organ failure and disruption in respiratory and cardiovascular functions. At that point, the virus doesn't actually contribute to the complications. It's a dead virus.
好的，好的。
张女士您好，凤凰卫视。我有两个问
Hi,
题。
Dr. Zhang.
首先呢，
I have
第一
two
个是
questions.
经过您刚才的介
First,
绍，
based
我
on
们
your
是不是可以
previous
理解
explanation
说
of
中医药
TCM,
在这
is
次
it correct to
疫情的
understand
作
that
用不是
TCM's main
针对
role in the
病毒
fight
本身，
against
而是针
COVID
对
was
人
not
的这个
necessarily
自身的
targeted
机
to
体
the
来提
virus
高免
itself,
疫力？那第
but
二个
in
问题
improving
呢是
patients'
这个
overall
中医
immunity
药
and
介入病
resistance
毒
to
的
the
治疗，
virus?
除了您刚才
And
提到的
second,
汤剂、
besides
中
using
药
herbs and
这样的有效
medications to
手段
treat
之外，
COVID,
您还提
you
到了
also
包括
mentioned
按
using
摩这样的方
acupressure
法，
and
能
other
不能具体给
methods.
大家介绍
Could
一
you
下，说
elaborate on
还
some
有
of
什么
those
其他
treatments
的
and
有
how
效
they
手
could be
段可以
adapted
作为一种
for
居
at-home
家
use?
这个居家抗疫的选择呢？谢谢。
应该说，我们中医治疗，中医药治疗
TCM treatment mainly does not target the coronavirus itself. It mainly improves our body's immunity and resistance.
就提高你的正气，是这样的。因为这个人得不得新冠是两个因素，一个
There are
因素
two
是
factors
有
that
病毒，
decide
第
whether
二
or
个
not
是
you
你这
get
个
COVID. One is the presence of the virus, and the other is your pre-existing level of immunity. When the virus enters the human body, it is combated by immune cells. If your immune system is very strong, it kills the virus quickly, and sometimes you won't even get sick. Many asymptomatic carriers have immune systems that can fight and placate the virus, but are not strong enough to completely kill it. So the patients don't develop symptoms, but their immune systems are also unable to completely kill the virus.
兴风作浪，但它本身又杀不死它。还有一些呢，抵抗力不行了，它就很快得
Those with weaker immune systems will
然后
actually
得
get
病，
sick.
这几种情况。
So TCM generally targets people's internal resistance and immunity. When we use TCM for treatment, It's generally not to kill the virus, but to improve resistance.
这一点是要明白，是吧？但是我们现在研究的时候，也把一些个现在研究的成果。
But we are also researching some herbs that can actually kill the virus outside of the human body and incorporating that into our treatment. I used an herb called huzhang in one of my prescriptions, for example. In our research, huzhang is the herb that is most effective in killing the virus outside of the human body. So I incorporated huzhang into one of my TCM prescriptions. This way, when taken, the medication both targets the virus itself and boosts overall immunity and resistance.
就更好。但是您刚提的，除了中药以外，实际我们既然是提高。
Before, you also mentioned treatment methods besides herbs and medications. When it comes to improving immunity, of course there are other non-herbal treatments. Anything that will make you more comfortable and healthier could count. So maintaining a healthy lifestyle, a good sleeping schedule, maintaining a light diet, etc. Acupuncture or therapeutic massage, gua sha, ear pressure treatments, etc. are all useful as well.
包括八段锦，我们在方舱里边普遍都。
We would use these methods in field hospitals on a case-by-case basis for our patients. Like I mentioned, none of our over 500 patients in field hospitals had their cases develop from mild to severe. This proves the effectiveness of these treatments.
我有一个问题请教您，就是如果说是确诊的轻症，医生认为可以回家服药治疗的话，我们是否应该配合哪些中药来治疗？另外呢，还有采取哪些方式来避免家人受到感染呢？
刚才我也讲了，这个居家隔离。
Like I mentioned before, at-home self-quarantine was not used in China after we realized that infection rates were still quite high for these patients. Usually, self-quarantine was not rigid enough, and the risk of infecting other families was very high, so we moved them to field hospitals instead.
但在美国呢，可能这个美国有美国的规定吧，但是我想要居家隔离啊。
In the U.S., there is a different set of regulations, so if you are told to self-quarantine, you have to take quarantine very seriously. Isolate the patient in one room. Don't have the patient come out into common spaces and make sure they only use one bathroom. The patient should open any windows they can for some air circulation in the room. Food should be delivered to outside of their door. Family members should wear gloves when picking up the dishes and wash and sanitize them separately, since the virus can also live on the surface of dishes and utensils and become infectious that way. COVID-19 is much more contagious than SARS. Besides airborne infection, it can also be spread via surface contact. In terms of medications, treatment is necessary even for mild cases because 10% of the mild cases will turn into severe cases. Just because a case is mild and the patient seems like they can recover on their own, you still have to treat it in order to prevent it from becoming severe. Prepackaged TCM medications are completely appropriate to treat mild cases. 莲花清瘟, like I mentioned before, would be very appropriate for mild case treatment. Patients should take all of the precautions of self-quarantine that I mentioned above. Most importantly, though, keep a positive mindset during your isolation. China has been dealing with this virus for nearly 4 months now, and we have gained a good understanding of how the virus and COVID play out. Now, although it is still, of course, understandable that patients with mild cases are scared and anxious, we know that it's very important to stay calm and focus on recovery. During the beginning of the pandemic, there was widespread fear and misinformation about the virus. But now we know that about 90% of patients with mild cases will recover completely, as long as you focus on treatment and recuperation.
应该说90%以上都是可以很容易就痊愈的，不会转为重症。怎么就知道要转成重症了呢？
How do you know if a mild case has become severe? If patients suddenly have difficulty breathing and experience shortness of breath or extreme exhaustion after performing basic events, it is likely
现在连床都不愿意下。
How do you know if a mild case has become severe? If patients have difficulty breathing and experience shortness of breath or extreme exhaustion after performing some basic actions, then it is likely the case has become severe. Some patients also experience extended fevers or their flu-like symptoms worsen significantly. At this point, you must get medical help as soon as possible and send patients to the hospital. Any mild cases that turn severe usually do so within the first 4 to 6 days of becoming symptomatic. That means that these first few days are extremely important in terms of managing the sickness, and patients should exercise caution.
谢谢张教授，谢谢。
请教张院士，治疗新冠肺炎的3方3药里边
Dr. Zhang, the herbal prescription used to treat COVID includes ma huang and xixing. As we all know, these two herbs have not been approved for use by the FDA. If we cannot use ma huang and xixing, are there approved substitutes that TCM doctors would recommend while preserving the medicinal effectiveness of the prescription?
他这个是这样，这个我们一般的
So TCM doctors usually use ma huang in the winter and xiangru in the summer. The two have similar effects, so xiangru can be used as a substitute for ma
我
huang.
们可以用香茹来代替麻黄。这个细辛呢，
If you cannot use xixing, it can be replaced by baizhi or ganjiang in small doses.
白芷，白芷啊，可以用这个干姜，但是干姜用量不宜大，来代替这个细辛也可以。也有用辛夷来代替这个。
You can also use xinyi to replace xixing. Xinyi has additional benefits because it will help treat mild cold-like symptoms like runny noses and itchy throats.
流涕呀，是嗓子痒痒啊，这个辛夷也都有效，是吧？这个白芷呢，它也有。
Baizhi has similar effects, and it can also help treat headaches.
如果有头疼呢，用它也非常合适，都可以根据病人的情况可以再代替。干姜要代替的话呢
But if using ganjiang as a replacement, the dosage should be small. We usually use around 6 grams.
谢谢。
To get these medications in granulated capsule form in the US, do you need a prescription, or can patients get them over the counter? Usually patients go to a licensed acupuncturist. Their clinics and pharmacies will have them. Some general Chinese pharmacies will also have them.
那就方便了。
Got it. That makes it more convenient.
张老师好。
Hello, Dr. Zhang. I'm a practicing TCM doctor in the US, and many of us are eagerly tuning into your panel today. We've been looking forward to this for a long time, so thank you for giving us the opportunity to ask our questions today. My question is this. TCM has been proven effective in China and has played an important role in fighting COVID. But many of us TCM doctors in the US feel helpless in our ability to contribute. This is because almost all Western practitioners in the US refuse the use of TCM due to lack of clinical and experimental data. What's your take on this?
说到证据的问题呢，因为这个药没有特效药。
So speaking of clinical data and experimental evidence, there is not yet a targeted medication or vaccine for COVID. I'm actually quite grateful for the FDA in this case. In order to save more lives, they expedited some approval processes. Chloroquine, for example, was approved by the FDA as a COVID-19 treatment without any extremely convincing data. So during an unprecedented time like this, when we are in the middle of a global pandemic, I think it's worth thinking about the role and timeliness of robust clinical and experimental data.
我觉得值得考虑，因为这种情况下，氯喹元是治疟疾的。
Chloroquine was used as an antimalarial drug, and other approved drugs were used for other purposes as well. These are all old drugs that we have repurposed for COVID. TCM has never been absent in fighting against epidemics throughout 3,000 years of Chinese history. In our written records, China has fought over 500 significant spreads of infectious diseases, 300 of which could be considered to reach epidemic level. We've accumulated robust experience from this. I believe that when a new pandemic hits, as long as we can find medicine that works, we should prioritize saving as many lives as we can.
等你找到了机制，找到了那是西那个观点。
From the perspective of Western doctors, I understand that they prioritize developing targeted medicine and vaccines. But developing a vaccine could take a year, maybe a year and a half. TCM draws on thousands of years of experience to treat the symptoms that arise in new pandemics. We iterate on and adapt all of our successful prescriptions from the past. This contributed to our success in fighting COVID in China.
应该取得非常好的一个成绩，这是最好的循证了。我们
We treated over 70,000 patients, not 70 or 700. Is this not enough clinical evidence?
再说具体的。
Speaking concretely, TCM healthcare workers have also been publishing case studies. We've published over a dozen now. The earliest one was published by a member of my team as early as February. It was a report on how 34 patients recovered with a combination of TCM and Western treatment methods. In our foreign version of the TCM journal, we also published a report of 108 patients' treatment with TCM and Western methods. We've also submitted a draft of an RCT experiment, a randomized controlled trial, report of 200 COVID patients, which is in the process of peer review right now. Many of these types of reports are being published, and they serve as evidence for TCM's effectiveness. I just hope that people are not biased when reading this evidence. Otherwise, there's very little we can do to convince them if they approach it close-minded.
In
my opinion, 3,000 years of TCM's usage is evidence of its effectiveness. More concretely, there's also the 70,000 patients we treated in the COVID epidemic. These case studies and published experiments are also evidence. Regulating our health is extremely important right now. A lot of students like myself have noticed that our physical condition has deteriorated since staying at home for isolation. I know that there are many effective TCM forms of physical therapy. Are there any TCM physical exercises that we can do to improve our immunity, such as simple exercises that we can do at home?
帮助同学们提高免疫力，来达到预防新冠肺炎的感染这个目的。
非常好的问题。
That's a good question. So even though gyms and exercise facilities are closed, there are lots of physical therapies and exercises like Tai Chi and Bai Duan Jing that can be done at home. There are good tutorials you can find online.
具体的我们在网上都可以找到。说的姿势不规范，你先练上。
Even if you don't think you're doing the poses properly, just use it as a form of exercise. You're not trying to become a professional, so don't worry too much about it. If you can't learn any of it, even doing basic stretches will be useful. You should maintain some amount of physical activity. If you spent quarantine learning some basic Tai Chi, I think that would be a wonderful use of your time.
那不有所得吗？一生受益啊，都非常的好。
张院士您好，哎呀，非常感谢您在百忙之中来给我们做。
Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. So before this panel, I actually took a look at the current status of the pandemic here in the US. We have over 500,000 confirmed cases and 18,000 deaths due to COVID. So the situation is indeed very serious. Thankfully, people are now realizing the importance of wearing masks, and our Chinese Association has also been busy packaging and donating masks to different healthcare facilities. I think that China's experience dealing with this has been very helpful.
在中西医结合，我知道我们那个张院士在武汉抗
How
疫的
do
过程中
Western
的
and
中西医结合
TCM
取得非
treatments
常大
actually
的这个效
combine
果
and supplement
在
each
方舱
other
医
in
院到
treating
了这个
COVID-19?
治愈率到了100%。
For example, I know that Western
实际上
medicine
咱们这
often
个中
relies
西
on
医
the
结
use
合
of
它是怎么
ventilators.
样来去结合
So
的？
in
因
your
为我知道呢，
experience
西医里
from
边
Wuhan,
最重要的
how
是
did
呼吸机，
TCM
那么我们
actually
中医呢
supplement
就是有一
this?
些中成药啊、汤药啊，它这个 这个中西医在结合的时候，在这个武汉的抗疫过程中，它是怎么样去结合的？我想了解一下这个情况。
在轻症和普通性的患者，主要是
For mild typical cases of COVID, we mainly use traditional Chinese medicine, with examinations and tests performed by Western doctors as a form of additional assurance. In field hospitals, we have CT machines, blood pressure monitors, oxygen equipment, etc., all for monitoring and assurance. We generally didn't use Western medicine for treatment and used TCM instead. However, there were some special circumstances where we would use antibiotics, like if a patient contracted an unusually high fever.
不固定的用西药，这是指的在方舱轻症、普通型的患者。
This was for mild cases in field hospitals. In terms of severe cases, TCM and Western doctors would collaborate very closely in order to save patient lives. We use whatever method is more effective for patients and can help them recover the fastest. The use of ventilators is extremely important. It helps keep patients alive during crucial periods. But if there are complications, for example, if the patient is not adjusting well to the ventilator, and the patient's breathing doesn't sync up with the ventilator, the patient's abdomen will become very bloated. Even while they're on the ventilator, their oxygen level doesn't go up.
出现这个腹部胀气，这种情况下，我们的护士就不断
In this case, nurses have to constantly adjust the flow of oxygen through the ventilator in order to ensure that the patient continues to sync up with it. Western doctors often use muscle relaxers in this case to help with the flow of oxygen, but this also causes the abdomen to swell even further because the GI tract has been inhibited. Patients also have trouble coughing up phlegm because the respiratory tract has been relaxed. In this case, we give patients some herbal laxatives, which unbloats the abdomen and clears the GI tract. It also recovers the patient's breathing. This eliminates the need to use a muscle relaxer and fixes the problem.
就解决这个问题了，这不挺好吗？有些个病人这个循环不好，甚至出现
Some patients also develop hypotension because of poor blood circulation. In this case, Western doctors might use drugs to constrict the blood vessels, which raises blood pressure. But the consistent use of these hypotension drugs is harmful.
给病人这个通过胃管打进去。
We use an herbal tonic to raise blood pressure, which can gradually wean the patient off of hypotension drugs.
循环知识就有了。就这种情况下，中医有的长处用它自己，包括刚才我说的。
Some patients also suffer from inflammation, which decreases their absorption abilities. We use some detoxification herbs in this case to supplement the Western medicine treatment.
所以这个
As I mentioned before, we have a universal herbal formula that we use for mild cases. For severe cases of COVID, we work on a patient-by-patient level to assess their individual conditions and needs.
张院士，我们都知道中医上面有食疗法。 所以我想向您请教一下，就是
As we all know, TCM places a large emphasis on dietary regulation as well. I wanted to ask what we can do at home to improve our immunity through balancing our daily diets.
日常饮食，从而提高全家人的这种免疫力呢？另外还有一个问题，就是想问您一下，就是您刚刚提到的那。
I also wanted to ask whether the herbal tonics and medications that you mentioned before can be taken by infants and children. Are there any precautionary treatments we can take to keep infants and children healthy during this time?
我们有没有什么特殊的注意事项呢？谢谢您。
哎呀，第二个问题我真不好答，因为。
Unfortunately, I can't really answer the second question since I'm not a pediatrician. I'm not that familiar with that field. There are also relatively few children and infants who have contracted COVID, although there are a few. I apologize that it's not really my field, so I haven't paid that much attention to this particular subset of patients. There has also been relatively little reporting about it in China, so I don't really feel equipped to answer.
抱歉，我实在是因为我不是搞儿科的，也没太关注这块，国内报道这方面也比较少，所以就不好回答这个问题。第一个问题是食疗的问题，
As for the first question, the most important thing is to maintain a light diet and don't eat anything that's too greasy or too oily. Eating lots of fresh fruits and vegetables is helpful. I also know that in the US, it's common to buy and take vitamins, which we don't normally do in China. Taking vitamins is great and is a good daily habit to keep up to supplement what your body is producing. The other thing is to make sure you maintain regular bowel movements, since you're excreting not only waste but also toxins. You can regulate this through your diet by eating foods high in fiber, like celery, to help with this. Also, make sure to not overeat, since your immune system is weakened when you're too full or too bloated. Stop eating when you're about 60 to 70% full. That's actually when your body is the strongest.
基本上呢有2个问题，第一个问题呢就是有关于这次国内对于这个新冠肺炎的
We know that herbal treatments played a big role in the fight against COVID. I wanted to ask if acupuncture also played a part in this. Additionally, when COVID turns from mild to severe, what are the symptoms of this?
中轻症状的转重的时候呢，也就是您说的这个呼吸困难啊，这个乏力。
You mentioned extreme fatigue and trouble breathing. How can we prevent, either through the use of herbs or acupuncture or otherwise, cases from turning from mild to severe?
因为这个客观的原因吧。
On the front lines in Wuhan, we used acupuncture relatively sparingly. There is a very objective reason for this. Our doctors and hospital staff had to wear many layers of protective equipment, including hand gloves, often made of latex or rubber. That made it very difficult to do precise acupuncture treatments. We used acupressure and gua sha a bit more. We were looking for simple treatments that we could do in field hospitals. We considered using moxibustion, but since many COVID patients have chronic coughs and trouble breathing, we didn't perform that much moxibustion either because of the smoke that it generates. I'm not an acupuncture expert, but I have conferred with a number of my colleagues who are to ask their opinions on how acupuncture can and should be used. The emphasis is on acupuncture pressure points. The main acupuncture points are 太阳穴, 大出穴, and 风池穴. We use acupuncture a lot during the post-recovery stage. We use a combination of herbs, acupuncture, and acupressure. It's a more holistic form of treatment. When it comes to mild cases turning severe, it usually happens during the first 4 to 5 days of symptom onset. The sickness looks relatively mild and manageable during the first few days, and then suddenly the sickness gets much worse. Common symptoms are fever, difficulty breathing, fatigue after basic actions, and heart palpitations. We look for blood oxygen levels that are lower than 93 or a respiratory rate of over 30 breaths per minute. These are indicators of the transition from a mild to a severe case. If the immune system attacks the virus as well as healthy organs, it damages healthy cells. This leads to the cytokine storm that causes the failure of multiple organ systems. This is what happens when a case turns severe.
往往就转为重症了。所以我们尽量不让。
That is why TCM treats mild cases so that they don't turn into severe ones.
同时注意这几个，因为在家里隔离嘛。
Paying attention to indicators and symptoms of severe cases is very important during self-quarantine or self-isolation. If you notice any of these symptoms, make sure to call 911 immediately and admit the patient to a hospital. Through Director Wang and our wonderful host, I would like to send my best wishes to the entire Chinese community in Los Angeles, including our international Chinese students. This pandemic has no national boundaries, and this virus does not distinguish between nationalities and races. If you're white, Asian, black, it's all the same. Our success will depend on our ability to unite and defeat this virus together. This virus and disease are still new to us. Even with all the experience we have only been dealing with it for a few short months. We still don't understand many of its characteristics. We don't know if it will be a temporary outbreak like SARS, or if it will become a seasonal disease like influenza.
但这个会不会？它会不会变成一个常态的，像流感一样的常发病、季节病等等的，应该说都不清楚。
We don't know the answers to any of these questions fully. In order to understand this, we need to collaborate and support each other across national lines, since this virus is a kind of common enemy for us. I especially hope that Chinese communities abroad can connect with China, and we can mutually lend our support to each other during this time. Here in China, we are also thinking of ways to support you from abroad, since we have survived these past few months of peak outbreak. This situation is familiar to us. Reading reports about the current situation in the US reminded me a lot of the condition when I first arrived in Wuhan in January. So we sincerely hope to offer our help and experience at this time. The Chinese government is also doing its best to help wherever they can in different countries.
我想这个我们共同努力吧，我也这个祝愿大家。
I hope that all of us can work hard in the face of this, and I sincerely wish you safety during this time. Everyone, please don't get sick. Stay safe and healthy. This is my greatest hope for you all. I hope that what I shared today can be of some help to you all. Thank you.
好的，谢谢张院士，非常感谢，今天您辛苦了。
Thank you so much, Dr. Zhang, for such a comprehensive and thorough explanation of the role of TCM in fighting this disease. We also sincerely thank the Consulate General's office and all of our media, medical, and student representatives who provided us with questions today. Because of time constraints, we will end our Q&A session here today, but our TCM community will continue to be active online and help all of us get through this time. Thank you all again, and thank you to our online viewers for your participation and attention. Bye-bye.
谢谢大家。